He emerges from the shadows. Okay, we're about to talk to Byron. I'm pretty sure that's how to pronounce it. My apologies if it's not. We'll get a correction here soon. But yeah, it's going to be the first of the SIMterview video series. So let me know how you enjoy it in the comment section below. Hopefully this will go smoothly. Here we go.
What's going on? It works.
Oh, I can't hear you.
You can't hear me.
I need to be recording my own face somehow too. Okay, I got my face. Here we go. So I'll just make this over here or something. Be side by side. Oh man, this is gonna look all super janky like if I do it like this. Jank. I guess if it gets down to it, we can just feature your face, because I mean I'm only asking a couple questions here, and then I'd be just like in the background like, you know. So how have you been?
Been well. Excited to do this.
Did when did you actually let me get my questions out here, but when did you first start sim racing?
Sim racing started for me about 1.5 years ago.
Okay.
So say like May or something of last year.
Was it was during the coronavirus?
Yeah, I mean, kind of just worked out that way. It wasn't like I was specifically looking for something to do during that time.
Okay.
Although I'm glad that I found it then, because it pretty much kept me sane.
Yeah.
Through that whole time frame.
Yeah.
I actually went through a period of time from like basically March of last year until May of this year that I really didn't leave my house much.
Yeah. No.
Like at all. Yeah, so I've got like severe asthma and stuff, respiratory issues, so I took it pretty seriously. Yeah. So sim racing really just was the thing that I could do, the thing that I could focus on. And I don't know if I would have got it as into it as I did if it wasn't that circumstance. Who knows? Maybe. But you know, I love it now, and I'm still doing it. So yeah, that's been about 1.5 years.
Do you see yourself like doing this like for the rest of your life kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, right now, you know, it's one of the things I've loved about it is it's a hobby that I can do from home.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, of course, there was an initial cost, and you know, I'm always finding new stuff to buy, right? Like most people. But you know, you can kind of pause that when you want, once you have a decent setup. You know, keep playing whatever sims you have. It doesn't have to have this ongoing cost unless you're doing iRacing, which I really haven't gotten into that myself. So yeah, I definitely plan on continuing this, you know, just for the sake of, you know, just so easy to keep doing it.
Yeah. So if you could choose a single sim racing game that you'd have to play for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Assetto Corsa, no doubt.
I knew that was going to be it.
And that's just because, you know, the breadth of content, right? Like you can race anything, anywhere. It's not my favorite sim for, you know, the physics of it necessarily, or like the AI, because I you know, race a lot against AI myself. I'm not a huge online racer. So, but the fact that you can just get so much content, you know, I decide, I want to try this car, this track, whatever it is, you know, it's probably available. So if I had one to live off, so to speak, for the rest of my life, it would absolutely be Assetto Corsa.
Okay, so if the mods were not available for that title, would it be different?
Yeah, absolutely. If I had to go with like base content, that would completely change that. At that point, I mean, I honestly, as controversial as it is a sim, I might have to go with something like Project Cars 2. There's just so much content base-wise in that, and that was actually the first sim I really got into, and I think it kind of gets a bad rap within the community as being, you know, a simcade title, and you know, I think if you look at what Rise has done with that engine in Automobilista 2, you can see that the engine itself is a sim. Maybe slightly Mad Studios wasn't able to get as much out of it as they should have, especially with it being their own engine. But the core elements are there. For me, if I throw a good quality custom force feedback file in to Project Cars 2, you know, it's pretty good sim. I think the main letdown for me has been the AI just being super inconsistent. But yeah, I might have to jump into something like that. Although Automobilista 2 has been my kind of go-to for right now.
I don't know if you're able to pan your camera around, but like, can you walk me through your gear setup, like, and you know, just kind of like give me a tour? Is that possible, or?
I can try. I don't know how well I can pull this webcam here, but
oh, you got triples there.
Yeah, I've got triples here on a T300.
Okay.
I've got a SH8 shifter.
Nice.
I've got a like eBay, Amazon handbrake here.
Those are great, man.
It's actually all hooked up.
Yeah,
I know that. I love it. It's served me well. So it's actually all set up through a custom DIY rig that I've made.
Nice.
This is a metal sawhorse, actually, that I've you know, bolted everything to. and I've got a set of TLCM pedals down there, mounted on a, I don't know, something I got off Amazon, this Pain like sim pedal stand that
Okay.
they actually hard mount onto. So, and then I've got that mounted to a board. And then my chair is a desktop, chair here, but I've got it set towards basically can't move backwards. So like when I'm, racing in it, like it's pretty sturdy.
It's solid.
Like it's
Yeah.
not moving around. It doesn't move back at all, anything like that. So, but I actually work full time out of this rig.
Oh, okay.
I work from home. Yeah. And that was kind of one of my, things with my wife to get her to say, hey, I'm okay with you basically getting triples and kind of taking over this office room that I'm in with all the sim stuff, is to say, if you use that same stuff to work out of it, it's not like extra in addition to what you already had to work, we could do it. So I've got a, I don't know if you can see here, like a keyboard tray that pulls out that I've got right under here. So that, slides in, but during my work day, this is where I am. My wheels in front of me, everything like that. So it's really easy to think about sim racing all day long.
So your productivity, like when you're actually working, is like off the charts because you can have stuff here, here, and here, and like you just full gamut of, okay. So that was actually one of my questions. It was gonna be later on, but are you open about your sim racing passion with people in your life, friends, family? Obviously your wife knows, but I mean, are people aware, like when you walk by, they know that about you?
Yeah, I mean, if they like, certainly anybody who I am currently friends with knows that that's, been my thing for a while. And when I meet new people, absolutely. I see people, kind of within the community seem to, I don't know, be shy about it, or maybe they face scrutiny within their personal lives. And I don't know if maybe I'm, just of a generation that grew up with video gaming in general as being an acceptable hobby. So I'm a huge gamer anyway, always was. That was no secret to anybody that knew me that I was a gamer. So to move that into sim racing, all it required was a few extra peripherals, and it's otherwise the same thing. So no, I'm not shy about it at all. If I could get anybody else interested in it, it's something that I love and I'm passionate about. So, if anybody wants to check it out, I'm happy to show them. I definitely want to share that around. Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. It's really important. I think not a lot of people really know how far along sim racing has come, I mean, myself included. Like I got into it almost the exact same time as you, and I had no idea things were at this level, So back to your triples. Like I've never experienced triples. How important do you feel are triples to like the immersive experience of sim racing?
I mean, it's kind of one of those things that once you have it, once you've known it, you really wouldn't want to go back. If you don't know what you're missing, it's probably fine. I mean, I when I first started sim racing, I was actually on a 60-inch TV out in my living room.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that was, probably like, I don't know, 3 feet away from where I was. Actually, interestingly enough, kind of gave me the same field of view as a 32-inch screen, about 24 inches away. It's just kind of how that works out. So, but yeah, once you try it, it's great. I have VR as well.
Okay.
So I can kind of swap back and forth. Like when I like VR Dirt Rally, when I play those ones, that's when I usually bust the VR out. I mean, obviously, exactly what that's all about. But I found myself switching back to triples more for my, any sim that supports it. Especially like I live in the desert in Arizona, so it gets pretty hot here.
Yeah, I used to live in Arizona
so it can
too.
kind of get, there we go. So so it gets a little uncomfortable when it's super warm outside, and even inside my house, especially in my little room here with my PC and everything, like it gets warmed up. So I'd find myself in scenarios where I'd end up going off track or something because I started to sweat inside. I gotta like reach in and try to wipe that bead of sweat away or something, and it messes you up. So it can, as immersive as it is, actually can take you out sometimes. So for me, just the comfortable, the comfortability, is that a word?
Yeah, you can use that.
Aspect of it. Yeah, I'll go with that. Triples has been better for me. And I have a setup here that works pretty nice. It gives me more than 180 degree field of view as far as wrap around. Especially if I turn the lights off and in here, it's really easy to get sucked in. It's it's not quite as on the level as VR, but there's less distraction.
Okay, now on to VR actually. So I know a lot of people feel that VR is not quite there in terms of like the user-friendly experience. You can't just like pop it on and just have everything work right away. It's not quite there. But how important do you feel is VR to sim racing?
I mean, I think it's pretty important for the future. You have a huge no VR, no buy crowd out there, right?
Yep, that was me.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So, and I guess I got into sim racing without VR, and
Yeah.
I have triples. Maybe if I didn't have triples, I'd be more, like on that level. Although there are sims out there that don't support either, and that's
Yeah.
always a bummer. But I think it's kind of, the wave of the future, if you will, in a lot of regard. And that's gaming in general, I
Yep.
think, especially with Facebook making like the Oculus, Quest 2 pretty available. That's what I have. That's what got me into it. I was like, oh, well, $300, I could pick up a VR headset. Like, let's try it out. And even though I don't use it as much right now, I plan to as it's getting in the cooler months. Like, I don't feel like I wasted my money on it. Just being able to have that experience and know that's available is awesome. And I do think that's kind of a way that things are heading, not in an exclusive fashion, I wouldn't expect, but I think you'll see more and more sims that are released are going to have that support.
Okay.
It'll probably be rarer to see, like, especially like a full like sim title, arcade titles and stuff. You're not going to see that as much, most likely, but like a hardcore sim based title, I think that's kind of an expectation now.
Yeah.
Especially for series that maybe didn't exist without it prior, anything coming in new, you're kind of gonna expect that.
I think personally, I think companies or developers are shooting themselves in the foot in terms of the future sales of their video games if they're not including that.
Yeah.
Maybe not like what you said. Maybe not like for all games, but for racing games, it makes 100% sense. It doesn't matter if you got a cable; you can just be there, sitting there, and just fully immersed, and you feel like you're there. It's really cool.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not hampered by room space or anything like that. You're sitting down anyway. I've really found it to be like the perfect scenario for it. I got a bunch of other games from my VR games, and I found myself not really playing many of them just because of those obstacles. But it's so easy just to sit down, and I think I've had I feel like I've had a pretty easy experience with it. People talk about having all these issues and trouble setting it up, and like most of my stuff just worked pretty much out of the box. The biggest thing for me has been trying to get frame rates right, and you got to do a little digging, testing as far as that goes. But as far as the base functionality, everything I've tried it in has worked pretty well.
Okay. Getting back into sim racing titles, one of the questions I'm gonna kind of have it as a theme throughout all the interviews is, what was your first racing experience? Like, even as a child, like, what was your first memory of like a racing game?
I mean, geez, going back to like Outrun on like NES or something like that. I mean, definitely. I guess Road Rash on Genesis had a racing element to it, right? That was obviously not. It was kind of more of a side aspect at that point, but the first like real racing games that I got into, and this is actually kind of tied into me getting into sim racing at all, was back in around 2004, 2005. I randomly picked up and started playing some of the NASCAR games at the time.
Okay.
And I'm not a NASCAR fan, didn't grow up one or anything. In fact, I didn't really start paying any attention to it until recently. I've kind of been checking it out. But I had a lot of fun playing like NASCAR, like 2004 to 2000.
What is it? NASCAR Heat?
2006.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah, I think. No, that NASCAR Heat's a current title. So this is like NASCAR Thunder back in the day. NASCAR Heat was the series that was pretty much right until the new NASCAR is going to come out in a few days.
Okay.
But anyway, so I played that back in the day pretty heavily for a while. Didn't really get into watching the sport at all, but really liked playing the games. And then, that's where it led to me, fast forward until March of this year, I randomly woke up one morning with like, oh, you know what? I used to play those games back in the day. That would be a lot of fun. Let me check out what the current title is. And that actually led me to pick up NASCAR Heat. And then I thought, oh, you know what? They've got cool force feedback wheels these days. Like, let me check that out. And I started looking into it, and like randomly waking up one morning with a desire to play a NASCAR game led to me like this whole journey I've been down. So that's kind of like where, for me, I feel like it really starts on a, more serious level besides like just, arcade games, Need for Speed, things like that here and there that I would have played.
Midnight Club. There's they probably named it Heat because after the thunder comes fire, right? Like, I don't know, you got the heat.
Yeah.
This is something kind of interesting. It has to kind of do with coronavirus and the whole esports thing that came about. A lot of people were still wanting to race, of course, and you had people like just itching to get back into it at any capacity, and a lot of real racers were kind of getting into sim racing for the first time. The future of sim racing, do you think it's possible that it could take over, 100%, and there'll be no physical racing, like, because of the danger. People are going to be like, oh, too many people are dying, getting hurt. There's too much pollution. What do you think the future is like for sim racing in general?
I mean, I wouldn't expect it to ever take over like
Okay.
racing unless racing gets outlawed or something, right? Just because as long as there are, the ability to do it, people take that risk now. I don't think that that's going to change. If they have the money to do it, if they have somebody paying them to do it, if they can get, as far as from a professional standpoint, they'll do it. Humans seem to be geared towards that. I do think, though, that it's going to become just more and more prevalent as potentially an entryway, a gateway, so to speak, into real racing, as much as like karting is these days. And I don't think karting's necessarily going to, stop being that as well. But, you do have racers these days who came up through, sim racing. And as you see like F1 drivers and stuff these days being more into it, having, rigs at home. You want to look at people like Max Verstappen or Lando Norris. I mean, they're, their sims are in iRacing and stuff. Like, they post videos of them doing it. And I think it's more of an accepted, path into motorsports, if you will. I don't think it'll, right now at least replace the traditional methods of getting in there. But it's certainly, I think, more accepted as something that's closer to the real thing than maybe people thought that it was. So I think it'll be a bigger part of the picture, and maybe not take over real racing, but be something alongside that's looked at more seriously than it's been at any point in the past.
Okay, so in terms of sim racing gear, do you think we're still like kind of in the infancy of how realistic things can get, or you think we're getting kind of close to really replicating how things feel and things?
I mean, as far as like wheels,
physics
and
and things, and maybe
I think we're pretty well set there, especially direct drive wheels. I'm really excited. For instance, like Thrustmaster's got a direct drive wheel coming out.
Oh yeah, I heard
soon.
about that.
Right. So that's something right now I'm looking forward to. Like, do I upgrade to that? Do I go with the CSLDD? Like, where's my next path? So I'm waiting to see what they come out with. But that's definitely a step forward, and I think especially affordability. That's probably where we're going to see a lot of changes. I don't really know technology-wise where we could go on that level. I think it's more, where we're going to see changes are more things like you're saying with VR.
Yeah.
VR becoming, better, easier, better picture, image quality, things like that. Maybe smaller, more comfortable headsets, things of that nature is definitely going to be, where we're at. Better and easier, more accessible, like motion rigs.
Yep.
I think that's, likely. So it's going to be some of these peripherals that maybe aren't the core of what sim racing is. So I think those have been focused on for so long that they're, maybe I'm wrong, and I'd love to be wrong. I'd love to see more, ingenuity in that aspect of things. I don't know where they could go, but I could definitely see paths for a lot of these other, areas to improve.
Okay. So you were talking about the Thrustmaster direct drive wheel base, and is that kind of like your next hot item that you're looking at purchasing? Like, that would that be, let's say, someone just gave you like, $1,000. What piece of gear would you get right now if it was dedicated towards sim racing stuff?
Oh, absolutely, a direct drive wheel of some sort. I love my T300. It's served me very well. Still does. But that's the next level, right?
Yeah.
I've never even gotten my hands on a direct drive wheel, so it's one of those things like I don't know what I don't know. I don't know what I'm missing out on.
Yeah.
But it seems like you guys and the people that have them enjoy them pretty well. So that's my go-to for sure.
I started off with recently I started off with the Thrustmaster T150. And and I liked it a lot, but like the wheel was small, like in terms of actual diameter.
Right. Yeah.
It was great, and it provided a real sense of immersion to the game and stuff, and I loved it. The only thing I didn't really like about it was the fact that it didn't provide enough resistance. So I stepped up to the CSL Elite, and then when I went from that wheelbase to the DD1, I wasn't that actually impressed. Fanatec really makes good belt-driven wheelbases, I feel. I felt a lot more detail. Like there was a lot more detail, like small details, like things that I didn't know I wanted to feel. I was more blown away by the CSL DD than I was by the DD1, and that was because the price point and because just the power levels were so different. But anyway, so I don't want to steal the interview here. What's your favorite piece of gear that you have right now?
My TLCM pedals for sure. I mean, that's been the thing that's been the biggest difference in experience for me. If there was one thing that like if I could downgrade everything else
Yeah.
and keep that, I would. Like I moved up from I started with a Logitech Driving Force GT. That was the first wheel I picked up, like off eBay, like $100, which it's typically overpriced, but in the pandemic, it was
that's a steal of a deal.
So,
yeah.
Right. So for me, I upgraded that to a T300, pretty big upgrade, but it was nothing upgrade compared to going from like the pedal set from a DFGT to a load cell based brake pedal specifically. So like that's the one thing that I love. I think Thrustmaster came out with a great product for $200 roundabout, USDs. I've been quite impressed with it, right? If I had to downgrade everything just to keep one item where it's at, that's where it would be.
Okay, so you're in the camp that pedals are more important to your experience than, say, the wheelbase.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I mean, that's what I always tell people. I see people post on like the SimRacing subreddit, right? Yeah. As far as, hey, what do I upgrade my wheels and my pedals? My answer is always pedals. Like I tell people, if I had to downgrade to my Driving Force GT just to keep my TLCMs, I would do it.
Okay.
Like that would 100% would be worth it versus going back to a potentiometer based pedal set. It's just so much easier to be consistent. The feel is better. It's more natural, right? Especially for people who drive every day. That's how real cars work, based on pressure. So for me, that's the most important piece. And I'm sure at some point I'll get into even higher end pedal sets and everything. But for the price point, like they're pretty solid. I've had really no issues with them.
Since you've started sim racing, do you feel more confident on the road in real life?
Oddly, yeah. I think I'm a more conscientious driver.
Okay.
I find myself something as simple as like keeping your both hands on the wheel, right? I was always pretty, typically like laid back, one hand on the wheel. And I find myself more in traffic, like paying more attention, like keeping my hand, that's what I'm used to. And these days I drive way more in the sim than I do in real life. I work from home. I don't actually drive real life much anymore. So that's what I'm used to. And yeah, absolutely. I think that it probably has made me pay a bit more attention. And I feel like if something happened, I would probably be able to react better.
Yeah, I definitely think so.
The car better and kind of know what's going on. So I thankfully haven't had to rely on those skills yet. But, I think if something happened, I'd have a better chance of dealing with it than I would have previously.
Do you think you've developed any bad habits from sim racing that's transferred over to the real car?
No, not that I've noticed, but I maybe if I drove more, I'd notice something. No, I haven't noticed any bad habits, anything like that. The one thing that always stands out to me when I get my real car is how huge the steering wheel feels. Like I feel like I'm driving a damn semi truck coming from a wheel on my T300.
Yeah, like you're like,
right. That's the main thing I notice in the difference, and just how mushy my brake pedal feels. But it hasn't translated it to any bad habits. If anything, it's just it made me more cautious and aware of what's going on around me.
Okay, that's good to hear. I guess this goes back along with bad habits, but when you see like a nice tasty road nowadays, do you get the urge to take advantage of it more so than you did before?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, whether or not I actually do that's a different story, but that urge, absolutely.
Okay.
I think about things totally differently than I would have then. Get a fresh piece of tarmac, especially no other cars on the road. Like I'm tempted. Okay. Absolutely to see what what I can do on it, so to speak. Like absolutely, I think about things like that far more than I ever did before, and just I've managed to check those urges so far.
Okay, yeah. So just in case any police are listening, we want to make sure not give sim racers a bad reputation here. Like, okay.
Absolutely, yeah. It hasn't translated to breaking the law at this point.
How do you feel about how expensive it is to kind of like get into sim racing? Like, because it's approachable, with certain gear, you can get into it at a decent price, but that's pretty much only if you have a PC or a console already. Like if you want to just get into it, it's kind of like a brick wall to some people. How does that affect how many people can actually get involved in sim racing?
It definitely does affect it. It is more of there's a cost barrier to it. And the thing with sim racing, and what I've realized is it's more of a hobby than just video gaming is.
Yeah.
I always put it more akin to something like golf, right? Like you're not just going to go and, well, I mean, I guess you could go pick up some golf clubs at like your local thrift store for a few bucks and give it a shot. But for the most part, people get into it. They spend some money. I mean, there's an expectation that you're gonna, spend a little bit getting into it. And it's no different with this hobby as far as that goes. And that's what people need to realize is that, for the most part, like it is expected to be approached as a hobby. Obviously, you've got your lower end, your T150s and stuff like that, G29s, and but even that, it's a bit much for people to, not knowing what it is and if they'll really like it to make that commitment. That's what I found when I started looking into getting a wheel. I was like, damn, these wheels are expensive, like way more. I thought I'd be able to go in maybe $100, pick up a force feedback wheel, like brand new and everything. I was like, nope, that ain't the case. So that's where I think things like the used market secondhand is huge. Hopefully people know how to take advantage of that. I was, after seeing the prices for what they were, when I found out, oh, there's an older wheel that's, force feedback, 900 degrees of rotation, like found it on eBay for $100. I was like, yeah, that seems reasonable for a used wheel, where before I thought I'd be getting into like a new wheel at that price point. So it is absolutely a preventative barrier. And I think for a lot of people, they get to a point where like, I'm interested, I want to try it out, but I just don't know if I can, want to commit to that. And maybe they never, take that step, and then you get people who jump in both feet, spend a bunch of money on a full 80-20 rig, triples and all that, and find like it's not for them. So and there's always the fear from people that that's how it's going to end up being. So I think you kind of,
you got to work up to it. If you got a friend
or something, if you could try it somewhere somehow, all the better, because then you would know. But I think a lot of people are gonna start like you did, T150, DFGT, something cheaper. And I'm glad those wheels are available, because I never would have gotten into it if I had to go out and spend $300+ on a wheel right off the bat, not knowing if it was for me. So I'm glad those cheaper options are available, even though they're probably maybe a bit more than people might want to spend, especially with pandemic prices. It's gotten crazy. I look at how much I got my T300 for back in like June of last year, and how much people are trying to find them for, right now. And I thought that would have been the height of like the price issues, and it's just gotten worse.
Yeah. It's kind of strange, because like you look at it like once you're already in it, I'm not saying like from the outside, everything seems really expensive, but once you're already in it and you see the value, I think it's a little bit easier to swallow, like, oh, it's $300 for this, or it's like $400 for this. But yeah, the barrier, most people aren't confident in buying something, unless they're able to try it first. And how do you do that? And like, how many people do you know in real life, in your daily life? Do you know anybody that sim races?
No, as far as my friends, like people I know in real life, absolutely not. I've never come across a sim racer in the wild.
Yeah.
Like that is, it's me and me only. I actually have one guy I work with who I know picked up like a T150 and was kind of getting into it, but I don't know if he stuck with it really. And that was about it. And I think me talking it up a lot is what really got him, wanting to try it out. But other than that, no, I got into this completely on my own. Got like, pretty, into it to the point where, I'm, started a YouTube channel based on it and stuff. And, that is something that you can connect with other people, not otherwise having people around you that are into it. It's going back to the comparison with golf. It's much easier to get yourself involved without, showing up at a golf course. Like I don't have anybody to play with, I guess you might get paired up with some random group, but it's something that you can enjoy by yourself. That's been my experience. And especially with me, that's why, I primarily race offline anyway. That's, and I'm kind of that way in gaming in general. I don't do as much multiplayer stuff. So yeah, it's me and me only.
So going back to that, you're kind of everyone else's gateway to this in a way.
Yeah. Like as far as people that know me, they'd never even heard of this until I, started talking their ear off about it any chance I got. Absolutely.
So how many people have you had in your rig? Like, have you actually like, let them experience like, oh, wow. Like have you let them experience it?
Yeah, just a few, kind of with pandemic and everything being the case. Especially with, I didn't even leave my house for a good portion of the time. Like this was it. Every dollar I spent on Simracing, I told my wife, like, this is me spending money on mental health and keeping myself sane. So
there you go.
Yeah, it's only been recently that I've kind of get to, have anybody in to check it out. And they're always pretty blown away. I've got because they know the wheel's going to be cool and everything, but you sit them down, you put a VR headset on them or sit them in triples, and you start the car up, and I've got base shakers set up here.
Yeah,
So as soon as they all of a sudden they feel that rumble that they weren't expecting, I usually don't tell them about that. So all of a sudden that, like, whoa, this is a whole other level than what I thought it was going to be. So the reactions have been good, but yeah, it's only been a few I've been able to so far.
So sim racing is somewhat therapy for you.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's certainly, been the case, at least just something to take my mind off of issues, whatever's going on. It's something that, you can kind of get lost in a bit. It requires a lot of concentration. So, by that very nature, like you tend to get sucked into it, once you're doing it. So yeah, it's definitely, kind of served that purpose for me.
Okay. Do you feel like your social life has improved or declined since you started sim racing? It's kind of a weird question. I thought of it though.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. It's probably been about the same for me, and that's only because like I got into it by nature of not being able to have as much of a social life. I think it kind of filled that void really, well. There's just something about it compared to even like other forms of gaming, where you're connected with it. Like there's a physical element that's connecting you on like so much more of a realistic level than anything else that it kind of that's what it does to people. It grabs you, it sucks you in. But as far as social, no, thankfully I've been okay on that level. But it was a no harm, no foul scenario since when I really got into it, I wasn't hanging out with people anyway.
Yeah. Okay. There's kind of like I don't know the word, maybe not stigma, but like how do you feel about some people will get offended if it's called a game rather than like a simulation? Like, how do you feel about that?
I mean, for me, that's ridiculous. Like, it's a video game. Like, if you look at how it's made, how it's produced, how it's distributed, it's a video game. The fact that you play it on a physical device and control it a little differently doesn't change that.
Yeah.
Like, and if you otherwise think video games have a stigma about them to where you feel like you can't equate yourself to that, cool, call it whatever you want. They are sims, they're simulators, but they're simulation games. Like that's how I feel about it. And I don't get bent out of shape if people want to strictly call it a sim. Like if you want, okay, fine, I'll call it, only call it a sim, whatever. Like no big deal. And I think I'm lucky in that I don't have, that negative association with gaming in my life. That I'm not trying to avoid that, but I definitely encounter that quite a bit. You see it a lot in things like Simracing subreddit where people get all out out of shape about it, and if you get into like any of the iRacing stuff, that's where it's huge. People don't want to call it a game, and I think when you're spending that much money on something, maybe you don't want to think you're spending that much money on a game. Maybe that's part of it. I don't know, but for me, it's what it is, and that doesn't detract from it at all.
What's the general sense you get from the community? Is it welcoming? Is it like elitist? How do you feel about it?
I think it's pretty welcoming for the most part. At least if you're properly part of the club and you got a wheel, people get in there and try to, like, oh, I play on a
the controller shame.
Pad. Yeah, they exactly. It's real. Which for me, like, dude, enjoy it how you want.
Yeah,
like and if that's all you have, like, still enjoy it. Like, there's a lot of fun to be had. Like, don't
feel pressured.
Say no. Exactly. Like you're still doing it. Like, so I'm not like that, but absolutely. I think that's pretty much your barrier. If you got yourself a wheel, at least strapped to a desk, you're part of the club is in most people's minds. And that is kind of going back to the previous question about simulator versus games. It's definitely much more of a game when you're playing it on a gamepad, where you're more simulating it when you're controlling it with a wheel and pedals. So, if you're really going to call it simulation racing, that is pretty much the line you really need to cross to get more into that. But, that's a line I'm not going to worry about myself. It makes no difference to me how you're enjoying it, as long as you're enjoying it, like have the fun. But in general, I found the community to be pretty welcoming on that level. Even a little bit as I've mentioned iRacing a few times because I don't do that as much. And I think that those, guys who get into that are a little more hardcore on it, again, because it's a huge hobby at that point. You're spending the money on it. And I've, even getting into that community a bit as I have, I've found that pretty welcoming too. So, I think the positives outweigh the negatives in the experience that I've had.
Okay. Well, what do you feel like game developers and, I guess modders too, what do you feel is missing? Like, what are some things that kind of bother you that you just feel aren't included in racing games, or just kind of like overlooked? Is there anything that you kind of notice like is a theme between all the games? Like, the water effects are wrong in this. What are some things like that?
For me, it's about like proper career modes,
Oh,
because I'm
okay.
primarily like I race offline. I'm, as far as like you talked about the different types of sim racers, right? I'm an immersion sim racer. Like that's why I
Yeah.
do it. I like to get sucked into the, idea of like I'm actually in a car, I'm driving, like, and racing AI is totally fine. I want to go through, so like give some like the F1 games. I think they probably have like the best like
Yeah.
career mode because they have a proper career mode in it. That's something that I would love to see implemented in more like hardcore sims, if you will. Beyond just like, oh, you can go through a season or something, and that's cool. But I don't know. I don't really know exactly how that's implemented. I mean, it doesn't have to be super hokey and like a storyline and all that. Although I'd take it, that'd be cool. I wouldn't turn that down at all. But even just something set up more as like I think that's one of the things I loved about Project Cars 2 when I got into it is they did have more of a career mode set because how I like to do it. And even when it comes to games that I play where that's not even like part of the game, I make it myself. I do my own career mode. I start with like the bottom level, slowest, least horsepower cars. Try to, especially if they have like a custom, championship mode, work my way up. If I can finish well, I'll move up to what I view the next tier as. So even just something like that, Project Cars 2 did that, really well, just built in. Like, and I don't know why more sims don't have that, especially, games that have, sims that have those different, differentiation of content,
Yeah.
not just GT3 cars or something like that. Although ACC, look at that game, they do have,
Yeah.
season kind of career modes. It's not exactly what I would be looking for, but it's better than, nothing. So that's what's always missing for me.
Okay. You like a game more that has like it's like a jack of all trades rather than like a sort of laser beam focus on like one type of racing.
Yeah, I mean, I do as long as they do it fairly well. I understand at that point you're kind of sacrificing like
Yeah.
the absolute best representation of those cars or that type of racing or whatnot. But that's fine for me. I'm not out there like, oh, this car's not realistic enough. Like, how do I know? I've never driven a GT3
Yeah.
car. I've never gotten in a open wheel race car of some sort. I have no idea. So that's irrelevant to me whether or not it's realistic. What I care about is just the general experience I have in it. How much fun can I have getting into this car? I don't care what this car feels like in this sim compared to that one, as long as the one I'm playing is one that I can have fun in. So yeah, that's I totally lost the track of the question you just asked.
Well, no, you answered it. You answered it. Yeah, like
Okay.
that's something I kind of struggle with at first because I was always finding games to try to compare it to how my car drives in real life, and I was always trying to get that feeling. But I came to accept the fact that it's okay for me to play other cars if I like them. Because I would always stick with Subarus. I didn't want to ruin my muscle memory, but then I started realizing, I really enjoy this, and even if my car breaks down, I'm still gonna be doing this and still gonna be enjoying it.
Yeah.
So, what was I responding to? I forgot. I lost track too.
I know,
Okay.
you asked me about and no, that really is it for me. Like I like stuff that has a lot of content. I mean, if you do something really well, like ACC, that's a great example of that.
Yeah.
Like it's a cool game. I've got, I don't know, 70 hours in it. I've certainly dabbled with it a bit, but ultimately, like, maybe if I was strictly trying to do it as like a multiplayer thing, I think that does, it lends itself really well to that. But ultimately, I like to experience more,
Yeah.
content overall. I really like to jump from one thing to the next, find, what I like that maybe I didn't expect that I would. For me, the adventure is like, oh, this car, like I haven't tried this car yet. What's it like? Okay, let's try it at this track, something like that. Which is actually something I want to encourage other people to do. What I've started my YouTube channel on right now has been, taking some of the Brazilian content in Automobilista 2 that I think a lot of people ignore because they're not otherwise familiar with it. It's not the same tracks they see in other sims. They don't know those tracks and those
It's
cars.
not Nordschleife.
Exactly, right? They're all about Nordschleife and Spa and,
Yeah.
So what I found is like, man, there's a lot of great content here. So like, I love discovering that myself. I want to share that with other people. So like, that's what, even got me to want to start a YouTube channel, is to kind of maybe introduce that mindset to people.
Okay.
No, I'm saying, yeah, right now, my main focus is just showing people what's out there, at least in Automobilista 2. I think it's a great sim. It's got a lot to offer, and I think it's for the people who aren't already into it, it kind of gets a bad, rap in a lot of regards, although it's getting better. Every update they do seems to have a good response from the community. And I've got a lot of other, things planned for the channel, especially around things like, doing more like career mode based stuff. That's where a lot of my passion within sim racing lies. So, I'm hoping to do something a little different. I've only been doing it about a month now. So, I'm just a baby as far as that goes, but it's been a good experience so far. I think I've got, some fairly good feedback. I'm looking forward to continuing it. So that is what I'm on right now.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to put links to everything in the description after the video. When you're actually in a race, I mean, you do race occasionally online, right? Or do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Occasionally.
When you're in an online race, what are some things that really upset you, that ruins the experience for you?
I mean, at that point, and then when you're online, and this is kind of gets back into that sim versus game thing, it sucks when you get in there and people just want to treat it like a game.
Yeah.
They're not out there trying to like actually race, demonstrate, proper racecraft, things like that.
Etiquette.
So, yeah, exactly. And everybody makes mistakes. Everybody goes too hard into a corner, goes for a gap that they thought existed and closed up. I mean, that's part of racing. That's, no different than real life. So I've got no problem with that. But if you're just, completely ignoring the etiquette, doing things that are just obvious, like racing 101, don't do that. That can get a bit annoying, but ultimately at the end of the day, I'm there just trying to have fun. I try not to get too bent out of shape about it, and I've made those mistakes myself, and I'm sure I will at times continue to make them. Everybody gets a little overzealous. You get, a little too into it. You go for that one pass maybe you shouldn't have. It's all a learning, experience. And, for the most part, you got to think if people make that mistake, maybe they won't make it again.
Yeah.
And I do think that is really where there is such a fit for something like an iRacing, where it's like, because you have to put so much into it, it basically causes people to take it a lot more seriously, and you get, much better racing than you would out of like a public lobby of some, mass, consumed game that, people aren't necessarily taking at that level. So, when you get into things on that end like that, there's a real good fit there.
Yeah, and that's where I think a lot of games would benefit from not separation, but like having lobbies that are dedicated, like hardcore lobbies, so that you have to have like a certain level to race with these guys. And I think there's too many games that are called simulation games that don't kind of really focus on that, and they have a mentality of like allow everyone in, which is cool, and in the grand scheme of things, it's really cool to include everybody. But those few people that really do ruin it for everybody, I think, can tarnish the game itself, and make it a toxic environment. So yeah, like you're right, iRacing is kind of that hardcore mode for sim racing. It's so I think that does have its place, and that was another one of the questions I was going to ask is, how do you feel about? I've never actually played iRacing. I've heard so much about it, and everyone's like, "Oh, you should get into it. It's going to be so awesome. Like you'd really love it." I hate the subscription model. I hate feeling like I'd be pressured to perform a certain way. Even I'm not going around just like crashing into everybody, but I just hate the feeling like it's almost like a job at that point, like an unpaid job. Like you're paying to work at that point, right? Like, yeah.
No, I absolutely understand what you're saying with that, and that's where I only tried iRacing because they a while ago had like it's like $20 for a year subscription. So I was like, well, that's kind of a no-brainer. Let me try that out. It's somewhere around that price point. And I got into it, and I've done a few races, and we'll pick it up every once in a while. But for me, the barrier was like, and maybe it's just not being as knowledgeable at how to navigate, like how to, there's like these different seasons, and how do you know what season to run, and everything like that. And I'm sure I could look into better guides and stuff and figure that out. But somebody coming into it from the outside looking in, it was like, it's like, at $14 a car or $12, whatever it is. It's like, well, I don't want to buy the wrong one, especially as like, I don't even know if I'm going to like this car in this sim. And then it was like, then I've got my old standbys sitting there waiting for me. And I'm like, I know exactly what I'm getting out of this. My money's already been spent. I know I'm going to have fun in this. So it's like, I found myself like, let me just get back into that. If I was going to get into online stuff, I'd probably more go with like a race room or something like that. Which that sucks if you're in the US trying to run race room, at least at the time of day I do, which is later at night. Like there's not much available, which is where iRacing does fit very well in. That's the one thing I loved about it is like I could jump in pretty much at any time and find a race with, damn near full grid. So I'm looking forward to maybe that becoming something that more sims have available.
Yeah.
Is that good quality, like ranked, online racing with good full lobbies. It's just right now iRacing's the juggernaut. It's hard to kind of take that on. I think Raceroom's definitely trying. You got a few other games, like I know Automobilista 2 has plans for stuff like that. R Factor 2 has more, plans. Studio 397 is trying to do some stuff there, but it either hasn't come to fruition or it just hasn't panned out on the level that everybody would like to see it as. So, it's kind of like you only got a little bit of an option right now. But yeah, that's why I find myself like, I'll just go back and do the offline sims that I know I'm going to have fun, and I'm still going to have a great race, going to have a great experience. Like, and I don't have to worry about somebody sending me some, message afterwards yelling at me saying I punted him off the track or something.
Yeah.
Like,
Dive bombed him.
happens,
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Which, I probably did, but
yeah, I've done it a couple
happens
times on accident. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like you lock it up or something like that, and it's too late,
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Happens to everyone.
Yeah. So you do feel sim racing is going to become more of a gateway to real life racing? I definitely agree with that. It's kind of like the demo mode for real life for some people, and people will use it as a stepping stone. Airsoft is one. Like a lot of people I know, I used to play airsoft a lot, and a lot of people would go into it teetering on the want or the need to join the military and to get into kind of combat, and they would use it right before like going into military school. So it's kind of like, I feel like you're right. I feel like sim racing can be that for a lot of people, but it can also, like we talked about previously, it could be a lifelong thing where this is what you want to do, and
Yeah.
I think that's really cool, that it can be both. It can be a game, it can be a simulation, and it can be a stepping stone. So I think that's really
Absolutely.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of options out there. Can kind of make of it what you will. Like look at me. I'm not trying to get out there and become the next racing superstar. I'm in my mid-30s, got a mortgage, family, kid, and all that. Like
Yeah.
that's my primary priority in life. Like this is just an escape, and it's a damn good one though.
Yeah.
It offers a lot, especially in some way that like to stay at home and still do it. But yeah, I think, there is a lot to be said for, being a stepping stone. You've got people out there right now who are racing professionally who didn't come up through like something like karting. Got somebody like a James Baldwin, world's fastest gamer, right? He's pretty famous for that. I can't think of the kid's name, but there's somebody who came up playing like Gran Turismo, who's racing like Le Mans and stuff.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. Is he like an Asian guy?
Yeah, if I want to think so. I don't want to say this.
Yeah, they're good at everything. Yeah.
Seems, yeah, it seems like that. I think that might be the case. But yeah, I mean, like that, and that was a big thing. Like he came up like only sim racing, and I think he won some like through like Gran Turismo or something. I want to say he got noticed and won some competition, and I think that's becoming more and more of probably an accepted way to get into it. It'd be interesting to see how much that really evolves into being a more proper gateway, but it's there already, in some way, shape, or form. So I can't imagine that it wouldn't get bigger.
Yeah, games like Gran Turismo really paved the way for kind of people to prove their skill. Dirt Rally 2 had one. They sponsored a competition like where if you win, you get to drive for them. In an R2.
I saw that, yeah.
So it's really cool how some games are actually using that to kind of search for the next up and coming driver, because they're out there and maybe they don't have the funds to race like in an actual car, because that shit's expensive, like even at the sort of like the local level, like your car is a lot of money, and when you crash, you got to pay for it. If you crash in a sim rig or whatever, I mean you can push restart, but I mean
exactly.
Yeah, so there's really something to be said for that, like practicing in a safe environment where you're not going to get involved in a car fire. Your family's not going to be grieving you if you make a mistake. You can kind of get all the weird little quirks out of your driving through simulation. And it's really cool. Yeah,
simulation, there's things that it lacks, but I don't necessarily know how much like bad stuff it introduces to a driver. I mean, maybe I'm completely off base there, but I think like if anything, getting in a real car is only going to add to your awareness, having the actual seat feel and everything like that you were missing before to make you even more of a complete driver, not that you're going to be lacking because you came up practicing in a sim.
Yeah. I agree with that. Like, I think it's really important to be able to differentiate between the two, and I don't think any of us would be able to confidently get into like what you were saying, a GT3 car and just like know exactly what the hell is going on and what this button does over here. It's important to have that kind of separation. But yeah, it can be a real tool, and I really think that. Yeah.
I mean, even just from building, relationships, especially as more companies and stuff make the crossover. Look at somebody like John Armstrong at WRC, right? Like he's pretty well known for being like a Dirt Rally 2. I mean, he was a consultant for them and everything, and he's able to turn that into a sponsorship from Dirt to actually get himself into like junior WRC. That I think is awesome. So like no matter like kind of there's several ways you can go to get there. Like there are opportunities from mixing sim racing into real life racing that I think is just going to become a lot more prevalent.
How do you feel about Fanatec kind of getting into building parts for cars, like their new wheel that you can just pop it on your rig and then pop it on? I mean, no one's gonna have, what is it, a Bentley or something like that, or it's like no one's gonna have that, but it's kind of cool.
It is cool. I mean, it definitely gives it that air of like realism. That if you want to know, like I'm touching the real thing that they use. That's awesome. Like if you got the money for it and that's something that's valuable to you, that's really cool that's available. Because especially for someone like me who's super into the immersion aspect of it, like anything I could do to kind of up that realism level, all the better for it. It's not needed by any means, as far as like you don't have to have that to have the fun out of it. But I think that speaks to somebody like Fanatec's general competence of engineering, if they're able to put something together on that level. I don't know if there really are people out there racing those cars using that exact same wheel.
I bet you nobody pretty much, but
but it may be a gimmick, but it does work. It can do it. It seems is the case.
Their marketing is genius.
I think that's pretty cool. Anything that kind of merges that real life to sim racing, I think is generally a good thing and only going to make sim racing stronger overall.
And that's what I was getting at is because there's still a lot of people out there, both in the real racing world and in the gaming world, that don't feel that they should mix, and I think it kind of blurs the line a little bit, and we are kind of doing something similar, and I accept that, so it's really cool, I think.
Absolutely. It definitely brings those two groups closer together.
In terms of gear, what company do you feel is making the biggest moves in terms of like really stepping forward and making sim racing a more immersive, more realistic place to spend your time?
I think one of the biggest things is probably Fanatec's like CSLDD, bringing the price point down. I mean, I got to point to that as being, one of the major, evolutions kind of in what's available out there. So as far as there's one company that's doing it, probably them, as far as that's likely to get picked up on a mass level and really introduce people to kind of that next level. Which, if it wasn't for the fact that my new Thrustmaster has DD coming out, really big part of that for me is like, I just hope I already have a few rims for my T300. Like if I can use those for that and have to avoid having to buy a whole bunch of new rims, like that's cool. I'll save the money doing that. So that's why I want to check out what that, looks like. But if not, I'd be hopping right into a CSL DD myself.
They do have conversions. There's a lot of conversions out there. Like, I think there's some limitations. Like, I don't know if it's recognized, but I think sim racing machines, if you're familiar with them, they make conversions from a company to Fanatec and from Fanatec to a different company. So there's some companies out there kind of supporting the cross compatibility. So that's kind of cool. But how do you feel about like proprietary ecosystems, like and proprietary connections, making it, or the lack of standardization in, quick releases and things like that? Like Fanatec, for instance, will market their wheelbase as this cheap, but it's not really that cheap because you have to buy their wheel. To use their stuff, you have to get more of their stuff. So how do you feel about that? Like, you think there should be more standardization?
I mean, I'd love to see that because I think that's better for the consumers end. It makes sense from a company standpoint why they would try to set it up that way, just as far as like increasing the revenue streams, right? But you look at somebody like the SimuCube Alpha Mini that's kind of gaining traction there. And I think is that what? Yeah. SimMagic. They've got, from what I have heard, a much more adaptable system as far as using third party like rims and stuff like that. And if they can gain market share with that, and that being seen as an advantage from the consumers, somebody like Fanatic's going to likely have to adapt, right? Otherwise, they're going to, lose out to that. As long as the general quality of those two products is, comparable, so I think that's what it's really going to take, is a company coming along willing to not do that and be successful and take market share away, which at this point, I don't really know how much, Simmagic is going to be doing that. But, I hear a lot of, talk about it within the community, and that's one of the major selling points for them, is having more ability to use like those, aftermarket rims and everything through, the better, and quick release setup, other than that proprietary, scenario that Fanatic's got.
So Thrustmaster is really stepping up here, coming up with a new DD offering, and I think they have one of the more developed ecosystems. So how do you feel about Logitech in terms of like they're so reluctant to change their ways? Like how do you feel about that? Like the G923, it's like it's the same thing as like 20 years ago. I mean,
I think for them, they're not a company. They make all kinds of peripherals, right? I don't think sim racing is likely a huge part of their bottom line.
Yeah. You got a point.
So I'd be surprised if they really stepped up to like introducing a DD or anything. Like they're not ultimately competing with somebody like a Fanatic, like even Thrustmaster's higher levels, like they compete with the T150, they're more on that level. And I think from what makes sense to me, looking from the outside looking in, they're likely fine with that. I mean, I would love to be wrong and all of a sudden see them kick out some higher level products, but being that they've been in the game so long and they've never stepped it up, they're fine being that entry level price point, because people who are just getting into it and like, oh, I'm kind of interested, that's where they're looking.
Yeah.
That kind of gateway scenario, like, you look at something, the general community, I think something like, G29, G920, 923, those absolutely are going to be the most popular wheels.
Yeah.
Just overall, because they are so much more accessible. And I have seen people do like polls on like the Simracing subreddit, and that typically is what people identify as, being the wheel, that most of them have. So I would be very surprised if they weren't fine being that, because, that market's not going away. It will be interesting to see how things look when these price points come down from something like, the CSL DD, and then we'll see what the new Thrustmaster direct drive looks like whenever that comes out.
I'm really interested to see it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That might change some things, but maybe it just, I don't know if maybe they just drop their price or what, but I think competition is great. I'd love to see them get into the higher level game.
Getting back into your specific gear, this is another one of the general questions I'm going to be asking all the individual interviewees. Is that what it is? Interviewees?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm calling the series SIMterview.
I like that.
Yeah. I think it's dumb, but people I think will get the idea just like by reading that, like, oh, must be interview or something, But what is the most annoying thing about any one piece of your gear, like something that stands out that you really wish would be corrected by the company?
For me personally, being that I use a T300, it's the quick release.
Okay.
On that thing, which not it's a huge deal, which I don't know if you've ever had to mess around with it.
I think it's like a screw-on type, right? Or
yeah, there's a collar that you have to unscrew, but then you have to physically take a screwdriver and undo a screw. And it's not like it really takes that long to do. It takes, still less than a minute to change wheels out. But if you do it a lot, there's definitely wear and tear. You're driving a metal screw down into plastic and up and down, a lot. And I've definitely noticed it's loosened a little bit. You've got a little more play on the wheel the more I do it. So I wish they had a better system for that. But in the same regard, I'm glad that it's available. I'm glad they do have changeable wheels. I don't think I've ran into too many other issues from a hardware standpoint that have really affected me much. As much as I love my eBay handbrake back there, I will say that definitely has some issues. That like it doesn't pick up any anything until I'm like a quarter of the way into it, and then it's 100% by the time I reach 3/4 of the way into it.
Okay.
So there's that doesn't affect my actual enjoyment of it at all. But Thrustmaster's current quick release on this, that's one thing that I'm looking forward to seeing what they come up with for the DD, because I highly doubt they're going to
they're probably going to keep it. Yeah.
I mean, if they're wanting people to be able to use the same rims, which I expect they probably will, I mean, it could be totally wrong, and then I'll be like, well, let me see what else is out there, because that's the whole reason for me like wanting to stick within that ecosystem, is to use what I already have.
Yeah.
But I'm really looking forward to maybe like something a bit better as far as that goes.
Something besides the Thrustmaster slow release.
Yeah, exactly. It really
Yeah.
is. I mean, there's no, it's not just click you're off. It's you
Yeah.
gotta unscrew this collar, or you actually got to do the screw first. You
Yeah.
unscrew, then unscrew the collar, and then do it all in reverse. And
Yeah.
it just takes a bit longer than you'd want.
It's the same with the Fanatic quick release. You have to use a safety screw. Otherwise, you get a lot of play in the wheel. Being a content creator, what's the biggest pain in the ass in terms of like actually creating content? Like, what do you struggle most with?
I mean, obviously, coming up with ideas, right? That's a constant thing. Like you're gonna need to keep doing that. I've got an idea right now that's gonna, have me going for like 15 videos or so, but it's like,
Okay.
I'm already thinking like, what's next, right? So just keeping it fresh, keeping good stuff up, and it's not super difficult to come up with something you could throw together a 15-minute video on. Like, I mean, if you keep thinking about it, but it is a constant thing you have to do.
Yeah.
Other than that, I get, editing.
Yeah.
Editing can be a bit of a pain in the ass. Like some people really like it, and I do myself, especially when you really start seeing it come together, and maybe you start doing some things
It's satisfying.
you didn't expect in it. It is.
Yeah.
It's really satisfying to kind of put that puzzle together. But it's like this thing you're always going to need to do at the end of the process. That sometimes is less fun than others.
Yeah, I mean, when you're like a huge channel like Jimmy Broadbent and you have like an editor, it can be just like sit in your rig, do your thing, and then that's it. That's all it's got to be. But like us or whatever, like it's not just like, you push record and then you race and you're good. Like there's like entire weeks where I don't get to actually race. I'm just editing, all the footage I got, and I'm like, I got to catch up with this, and I promise this video. It's more or less a second job. It really is. You know? And people don't realize how many hours it takes to get the content to them. I'll like do like 12, 14 hours sometimes on some of the videos. Like
I'm with you there, and obviously folks like us, we do it because we love it. And I've seen you say it before that like you'd make the videos even if nobody watched, and I'm the same way. Once I started, kind of getting into it, I realized like I'm already doing a lot of this anyway. I'm already spending the time racing. If I kind of just film it, come up with some ideas, it gives me a creative outlet, even if it's not getting picked up huge. Like I didn't start my channel with the idea of making money or becoming the next Jimmy Broadbent or anything. I just wanted to share my experience. If some few people get out there and enjoy it, it's totally worth it. But I enjoy just the creative aspect of making it. I'd never been into, video editing. That was all new to me. So I'm learning a new skill. That's fun.
Skillshare.com.
Yeah, right. When you get into like the pre-recorded, edited stuff, like it's it's a lot, but I enjoy it. I love it. I've learned something with every video I've made. I feel like I've made improvements. And I'm only about to release my 5th video in the next day or so here. So it's totally new for me. Again, I've been a month into this. But every one I make, I come away feeling like that was a lot of fun. Like I don't know how good it is. It's hard to be objective when viewing your own material, but I feel like I've gotten positive responses to it, and more than anything, I've enjoyed the process. So that means more to me than anything. If other people like it too, even better. But I had fun doing it.
Yeah, and it's a really nice social outlet too, I think. And it connects you to the community. Speaking of which, how much do you think content creators affect the sim racing community?
A lot. I think especially when you get to the bigger channels, your Jimmy Broadbents, Gamer Muscle, random
Simracing Garage,
Simracing Garage, Simracing 604.
Yep.
I mean, Mike Smith, I love watching anything he puts out. Absolutely, it influences people's opinions of things. My main interaction before the YouTube stuff with the community was the Simracing subreddit. And you see so many people referencing these YouTubers and what they do and what they say and what their opinions are, that it's pretty obvious that they have a pretty large effect on what people think. And I could say for myself, getting into sim racing, that was my first stop for information was YouTube. Let's go out there and look up, hey, how do you get into it? What do you need? Let's look up reviews for this product. And that's really no different than a lot of other things in life. YouTube is somewhere that I go to, and there's a reason people call them influencers, people who do that, especially when they get to that higher level, because they really do wield quite a bit of influence. Right or wrong, I've seen some people say some things that I'm like, man, that's not been my experience, but people take it and run with it and preach it like it's the gospel truth. And I guess they have some responsibility there if they want to. At least if they want to accept that responsibility, but there's no doubt they've got influence.
I find myself kind of judging certain content creators. I'm not going to name any names because I don't want to call anyone out, but people that are more biased towards certain companies, and they receive products for free, you know, and I receive products for free. Like I've even before I got into sim racing, I used to be sponsored by some firearm companies. I did a lot of firearm content, but how do you feel about certain channels like almost being paid to say nice things? They just can't say anything bad about it, and if they do say something bad about it, it's like something stupid, like, oh, I wish it wasn't black, you know, I wish it was red, you know.
Yeah.
You know,
Completely inconsequential.
yeah.
Yeah, and you know, you never know exactly how much of their you know, opinions they say are affected by that, and even subconsciously, right? Like, if someone gives me a product for free, I'm probably more willing to overlook flaws than I would be if I had shelled out my hard-earned money and I'm like, I'm not getting my money's worth out of it, right? That's just like human nature. So you never quite know exactly, you know, how realistic it is what they're saying. I feel like, you know, most channels that I watch, I've got a pretty good idea of like, you know, how legit they are with the things they say, and those tend to be the people that I gravitate towards, you know, watching more, especially for in reviews, things like this. And exactly, you can tell the people who are going to say, hey, look, I love this except for this part sucks, I really wish they'd do something better with this, versus like, oh, I wish it was a different color. That's, you know, these like real soft negatives. You hope that what they're saying is legit and real, but it's like at the end of the day, even just that human psychology is going to be influenced by the fact that they got something for free.
Yeah.
Certainly more likely to say some positive things about it.
Yeah. So I am going to have to get going. I want to end it on one more pretty basic question, but it's going to be, like I said, one of the ones that I have it as a general theme. Top 3 racing games of all times. Doesn't have to be sim related. Doesn't have to be sim related. But
Jeez. I mean, for me, I'd have to go with more, you know, the more recent stuff that I've played, just because that's the bulk of my experience. You know, like I definitely had things I played as a kid that I loved, but I never got super into like, you know,
Mario Kart.
I don't know, maybe like Mario Kart, yeah, classic. Maybe like Gran Turismo 3. That was probably the first game that I ever spent any time with. That was like got more into the sim level of it, and really like what do you mean I have to use the brake on a corner? Like that blew my mind when I couldn't just completely you know,
just gun it
through the whole circuit. So that is probably up there, just changing my mindset of what racing games could be. But more recent stuff, just as far as fun, I don't know, Wreckfest, love that game. Absolutely, you know, that's when I could hop into it anytime and know that I'm gonna have a blast. So just for pure enjoyment, like getting away from the serious aspect of it, that's my go-to. And then, you know, again, we mentioned earlier, Assetto Corsa is just so widely, you know, or it just has so much there that you can have fun in, that like I think I couldn't leave that off the list, even though it's not even my main sim. I don't, you know, I play a lot more other, you know, a lot of other sims more than that these days. But like if I was going to a deserted island and could only take one sim with me, it's Assetto Corsa.
Okay. And to end it out, I introduced you as Byron. Is that how to pronounce your name, right?
Yeah, Byron.
Okay, okay. Because I was like, damn, like maybe I'm saying it wrong or something. Like it's like a foreign name or something, but okay.
Nope, Byron Boyce, you got it.
Well, cool, man. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this with me, and I'll try to get this edited as soon as possible. I think I'm going to do it in a little bit of a schedule, like maybe one a week or something like that. Is there anything that you want to, I don't know, advertise or anything, or besides obviously your channel?
No, just, yeah, if anybody is interested, check out my channel, Byron Boyce. Certainly would appreciate it. Maybe you find something there that you like. But otherwise, just, yeah, Douglas, thanks for having me on. It's been a blast. You know, hopefully people find this interesting. I'm definitely looking forward to some of the other interviews you have come up. You've got some YouTubers that I already watch and enjoy. So, you know, I was really excited to see when you know, said, hey, I'm looking for some people. I jumped on that. Like, I'd love to be a part of it, because I'd be watching it anyway, even if just as a viewer. So, yeah, this was, I think, a great idea. Definitely appreciate having me on.
Yeah, thank you, man. Well, I'm going to get going, and happy sim racing. So that was the first interview. Thank you, Byron, for participating, and thank you in advance for the future participants. Have a good day. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in a future video.